Hi, welcome to tdcat.com. Whatever your thoughts are on 4K and UHD, I suppose to be precise, there's no doubt that it is here to stay. There are quite a few television programs now being recorded and distributed in 4K, but really not that many compared to how many are out there. What you can find, of course, is random tests on YouTube and Vimeo and other such sites that have 4K shots of usually just a load of trees and insects and time lapses and things like that, which kind of aren't interesting at all. So what I wanted to do today was take a look at 8K. Because, well, why not? I can't create 8K. I don't have anything to record 8K in. I haven't got anything to record 4K in, really. So all I'm going to do is have a look at creating an 8K video in Premiere. And I'm just going to do that with a couple of images. And even the images out of my 5D3 are nowhere near 8K. Because 8K is actually about 33 megapixels if you kind of understand that terminology better than the resolution. And it is, of course, twice that 4K. So where HD has 4K, has HD, 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 and HD to make up the 4K. 8K has 4K, 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 4K. So it's really big. It's like 7160 pixels across. So really quite large, larger than any of the pictures I can get out of my 5D. So I'm going to just use some of my images and scale them up. So the final output won't look anywhere near as good as 8K should. But I just want to try, have a play around with it, see whether my computer can handle it, and upload it to YouTube, because I think YouTube does now support it. So I'm going to go into Premiere and let's see what we can come up with. So here we are in Premiere and I've created a new project. And now I need to create a new sequence. But of course my sequence isn't going to be my usual 1080p 50 frames a second sequence. Of course we're in the UK here, so we're using PAL, which is why it's 50 frames a second. I'm going to create a 50 frames a second 8K sequence. Exciting, isn't it? So it's going to be 7,680 pixels by 4,320. And that is, of course, the 16:9 aspect ratio. My video previews are fine in standard HD. So what you'll see there is that when that program monitor opens up, we have our view set to 10%, and that's 10% on a. This is a full HD screen here, and this is 10%. So if we set this to actually the original native resolution, it's just silly. You know, we've got to scroll left and right to view all those pixels on an HD display. Still, let's proceed. Just want to say at this point that I doubt we'll see 8K for any well, we won't see any sets, any content produced in 8K for some time. I have no doubt that the companies that sell televisions and any marketing departments will want to leech as much money out of the consumer as possible and get everyone to upgrade to UHD first before they push out 8K UHD. Yeah, that's just the way the world works. So I'm kind of faffing around with a Premiere workspace layout for from my 4K monitor, my 4K DCI monitor. So I'm having to kind of squish and move things around a bit because obviously that doesn't fit in my HD tutorial window. 4K tutorials, not much point, I don't think. So all I'm going to do is bring in an image, and I've got some full res images here, and I'm going to start with this one. This is a picture from my 5D3. It has been slightly cropped, but it's pretty much full res, which is this particular image is 5,316 by 3,544. So nowhere near 8K, and you'll see how much off it is by when I drop it on that frame. So here we go. That's how much is missing. And this is pretty much a native res image from a 5D3. But of course, the 5D3 is 24 megapixels or thereabouts. It's not the 33 megapixels of 8K. So let's increase the size of this to start with. And thinking about it, this can be a tutorial on basic keyframing as well, if you're not familiar with keyframing. So let's zoom in. You can zoom in. You can zoom in quite a lot, and it looks fine on the screen, but then, of course, that's because I'm not viewing it in 8K. If I was viewing it on an 8K display, I'm sure it would look rubbish once it's scaled up, but never mind. This is just playing around, isn't it? There's no reason to do this other than to see whether or not the computer can handle working in an 8K sequence. So my default time for an image is 5 seconds. It looks there, so I'll put them in a little bit longer than that. Make this just under 10 seconds, and I'm going to put a position keyframe and a scale keyframe there, and probably an opacity keyframe actually, because I want to bring this up from nothing. So we'll put an opacity keyframe at 0, and then we'll move across nearer to the end. Stick opacity up to 100% to automatically put another keyframe there, and we'll move the scale, we'll move the position and the scale a little bit. Let's see how much we can get away with. Not very much. Okay, yeah, that's as much as we're going to get away with on that, so we don't have too much. We have some movement, but it works fine, doesn't it? I mean, that's really, really smooth. That's really nice. Might put a fast blur on that as well, just to go down traditional methods. Drop a fast blur on the start, and put the blurriness up. But of course, the blurriness, the number of pixels you need to blur it, is more, because obviously when you're dealing with this kind of resolution, yeah, it's going to take more pixels to blur it. So we'll go from about there, put a keyframe in at 120, and we'll unblur it by the time we get to here, and expand out our video there so you can see what's going on. Yeah, that looks okay. I'm not sure now why. Oh, I've changed this to dark colour. There we go. And let's just play this. That's at full resolution, so let's just play that. Brilliant. Okay, well, I mean, that actually works a lot better than I expected it to. So let's bring in a second image just to merge two images together at this point. Bring this one of Kate and Marley sat together. This dog, by the way, is Pug. Is it a pug? I'm not very good with dogs, but when I say that, I mean I don't know one dog from another. And it belongs to my girlfriend's sister. And it's a very nice dog, very placid, very playful. Yeah, this is just a couple of pictures of the dog taken at Christmas. It's not very old. It's only about a year or two old. Any others in there we could use? I'm not going to start bringing in pictures of children, because that's just boring, isn't it? Everyone has pictures of children all the time. No one out there in YouTube world wants to see a picture of my boy. I haven't said that. I'm not sure anyone particularly wants to see a picture of a dog either, but I've got to work with something, and I want it to be my content rather than breaking any copyright laws. So, here we go. And so now that switches to that image, so we can do a zoom in rather than a zoom out. So we're sort of essentially creating a Ken Burns effect here, aren't we, on these images in an 8K sequence. So we're going to have to start from a zoom of about 143 like that, and possibly move it up as much as we can to get him in a good position. There we go, that's not too bad. And okay, so we'll move to the start of that particular clip. I know there'll be people watching this going, there are loads of really good keyboard shortcuts to do the stuff you're doing, and you don't have to do all that fiddling around, and there's far better ways. I know there are, but I don't work in Premiere often enough at the moment, and I want it to be clear to everyone watching where I'm actually moving across the screen, because if you're just tapping away on keyboard shortcuts, it doesn't really help anyone who might be watching and thinking, I wondered how you did that. So we're at the start of the sequence here, start of the clip. Again, we'll put a positioning scale keyframe on, move further down the clip. Doesn't have to be at the end at this point, because we can just move them across. And let's zoom in on Marley's face. So let's kind of put him there, move across, and extend this out. And then select these 2 keyframes that have just been created and put them to the end. And we get a nice movement across, but we'll have to also bring in this clip. It's going to be on top. It's above that in the timeline. It's on top of the other one, so it will just go on top. So I'm just holding down Control there when I'm doing that, and dropping on the opacity keyframe. So there we go. We've got a nice transition there between the two. Anyway, I'm kind of like concentrating a bit too much here on the content. I'm not really too bothered about that. This is purely how will this work in 8K. So there's 15 seconds of footage there. I wouldn't mind something like 30 seconds. So I'll carry on creating that. I'll pause the tutorial and come back in a second. Right, okay, so we're nearly there. And as you can see, I'm resorting to using portrait images now. So this one is 5760 by 3840. I think that is the native resolution of the 5D. Actually, that sounds familiar. And I'm going to have to zoom in loads on this one to get him in the frame. So keyframe on the blur, move forwards, put a keyframe out wherever you want it to be. And we can drop the opacity down of this image like this. Right, so certainly from playing and messing around like that, we're using some pretty big images here, but the computer's handling it fine. Just for information, I'm using a GTX 980 Ti graphics card, and that seems to be coping pretty well with it. I'm actually going to do a short video on a power supply upgrade that I did recently, and it seems to be making my graphics card perform loads better. And I'll just put a little marker up for that now, so you can link to that and take a quick listen. It's just a bit of a waffle about a power supply. Music-wise, I'm going to actually just use a quick track from soundimage.org. That is just a guy who writes music and says, if you want to use it, use it. And I wrote a post on my blog about this guy because I think it's great that when people do that sort of stuff. There's so little music out there that won't affect monetization as far as YouTube's concerned, and also won't impact copyright laws, or won't have any copyright laws on them. But he just kind of does it for the I don't know, for the warm and fuzzies that he gets from it, or whatever expression you want to use. A bit of an American expression, that, I suppose. So I'm just going to put that on as some music for this, because we need some music on here, don't we? We need something. So let's just... No, I'll just leave it at original and then just fade it at the end. Here. We'll just fade this out. And bring it in, otherwise it'll leave the rest on as no audio.